As an academy owner, you work hard to build trust with your students, their parents, and your community. But trust isn't something you claim, it's something you prove and earn. That's where Academy Safe comes in. We help academies like yours stand out with verified safety standards. Background checks for all staff, U.S. Center for Safe Sports certification, concussion training, defibrillators on site, CPR, first aid and AED certification, security cameras, rank and lineage checks, and verification of business insurance. Join the trusted martial arts registry that's redefining safety throughout North America. Lead by example. Show parents you're accredited with Academy Safe.
Hello, and welcome to My Empty Hands, a podcast about the martial arts, typically focused on Kempo, but we give love to all the martial arts around here. I am Reggie Darden, and I've got another wonderful guest with me today, Mr. David Wood, or known in the Capoeira world as Kung Fu, and we're going to get into his story and the meaning behind his apellido and all of that here in just a little bit. I usually start things off by just giving a little bit of my background. So I currently train in multiple martial arts at this point. American Kempo, Hapkido, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Muay Thai, and of course, Capoeira. I've also done some Taekwondo and a little bit of boxing when I was in the Army. So as I always say, that keeps me busy, but I have fun. I enjoy it, and yeah, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. So we're gonna go ahead and turn it over to our guest here. How did the martial arts find you? How did Capoeira find you? Where did it all begin? And we'll just take it from there.
So I guess it all began back in my youth with Teenage Mutant Hero Turtles, as they were called in the UK back in the late 80s, early 90s. Ninja was deemed, I think, too violent a word or something like that. But that was cool, and we had a bit of an interest there in the martial arts. And then as I got older, I idolized Bruce Lee, like many young boys and men. And it was actually Tai Chi that was my first martial art. So I was just sort of interested in the martial arts generally. When I was in the sixth form, which in UK schools is sort of 16 to 18-year-olds, that was when I got the opportunity to actually start training. And there was a Tai Chi class advertised. I think actually my mum might have pointed it out to me. It was in the local newspaper. And so I went along to that, and that was with a sort of Wutan UK, a Chinese martial arts school. So as well as the Tai Chi, they also had a Kung Fu syllabus. And so as well as in the Tai Chi, I ended up starting the Kung Fu with them as well. There was a range of styles within that. I also, for a year, went along to the invite-only Sanda, also called Sanchu, sort of a full contact sort of Kung Fu training before university, and my sort of gap year in between school and uni. So I love the martial arts generally, and I was loving the Chinese martial arts. I kept up with the Tai Chi and the Kung Fu when I was at university, and then went back home after graduating and carried on working at the local hospital. And it wasn't until I then kind of permanently flew the nest and moved to Gloucestershire for work, to work in the charity sector, that my martial arts school wasn't in the area. And at the time I could have sort of afforded the time and the money to drive the sort of 45 minutes to the lessons, and then I couldn't have afforded the lessons as well, on top of the sort of the fuel costs and things. So it wasn't really possible to get to the classes. And so I was missing the martial arts. I got into running to keep fit. But they kept sort of nagging at me. I was wanting to get back into it. And so I looked at some of the schools in the area, and they it felt like I'd be sort of treading the same ground. I'd got to the sort of the senior sashes and the kung fu. I've been doing Tai Chi for a while. I'd run Tai Chi club, a sort of student club up at university and things. And it just, starting with like a different school, but at the beginning, it felt like it wouldn't, it's always good to train the basics, but I didn't feel like I was going to go places for a while doing that. And so I had seen Capoeira at some point in my travels in an event in Cambridge. There was a group there that had done that. And I was aware of Capoeira itself just from my reading about martial arts. And so I just plugged it into Google and actually found that there was a local group. I emailed them. They got back in touch, and I just fell in love with Capoeira so much more than the Chinese martial arts. I still sort of love Kung Fu and Tai Chi and things, but it was really Capoeira that grabbed me whole. And here I am 18 years later, I guess.
Oh, very nice, very nice, very nice. Yeah, I believe, let's see, in November, it will be 19 years for me. So yeah, the time flies, and but once the capoeira hooks get into you, it's hard to stay away, and hard to say no. So very nice, very nice. So just kind of going back to the Tai Chi part of it, is there, I would say, is there any kind of maybe misconceptions about Tai Chi in your experience? I know a lot of people kind of see Tai Chi and they think, oh, well, just like kind of old people in the park and just kind of moving around. But yeah, in your experience, was there anything in Tai Chi that maybe the general public is not really super familiar with, or maybe
Yeah.
misunderstand?
Well, I think Tai Chi, the most common thing that you see are the forms, which are essentially a sort of moving meditation, and they are obviously done slowly. And so the kind of martial aspect to those moves isn't necessarily immediately apparent, which is still true of other sort of kata and forms and sets that you get in other martial arts. I mean, obviously a kick is very obviously a martial move, but some of those are harder to see. And in fact, I remember being frustrated. I forget who, there was a group that was in my local area when I was doing Tai Chi, and they specifically said that it wasn't a martial art, and that I felt was doing a disservice to it, because there's nothing wrong with training Tai Chi and not focusing on the martial side at all, having it as just a moving meditation. It's going to help your body in a lot of ways. It's good to move the body, focusing the mind, balancing. I believe there's been some good scientific research actually that Tai Chi can especially help reduce falls in the elderly. I think it's another reason why it's associated with sort of older people. But it is still a martial art, and I think there's an Eddie Izzard sketch where he makes a joke about it being not effective because it's just too slow. You know, somebody comes to attack you and then you've got to slowly try and move to block. And obviously there's that saying, isn't there? It's slow is smooth and smooth is fast. And when you're training Tai Chi, it's not that you would anticipate to move that slowly in an actual fight. I think what's probably been lost from Tai Chi, I guess, and from a number of martial arts is putting it into practice more. You see those videos, I mean, credit to them, of the sort of Tai Chi masters that will go up against an MMA fighter and not do very well, because I think what's possibly missing from a lot of traditional martial arts is actually that aliveness, that putting into practice the techniques and the moves. But it's not to say that it isn't effective. If viewers are familiar with Ramsey Dewey on YouTube, I'm sure a few years ago I heard him talking about an encounter he had with a Tai Chi master who was actually very effective in a combat situation. So it's not to say that it can't be effective, but I think that conception, because it's slow, because you often just see some old people moving slowly in the park with it, the martial side of it is just not as apparent. And I also think that if the martial side of martial arts is what's drawing you to martial arts, and Tai Chi probably isn't for you these days, it would be very, very interesting to go back, 5 centuries and see how Tai Chi was taught and practiced and used back when there was much more sort of combat between the
Yeah,
practitioners.
exactly. Yeah, that's I always, whenever those kind of conversations come up about, oh well, this art wouldn't work or that wouldn't work in the street and that sort of thing, I always kind of laugh at that idea, in that if it didn't work on at least some level, people wouldn't find a reason to teach it, at least for the most part. I mean, there are some folks out there that are into the no touch knockouts and that sort of thing, and we can debate whether or not that's effective or not. But for the most part, most of the arts that are still being taught today is because there is some sort of benefit, at least in my viewpoint, my experience. There's something to be gained from any art, and the effectiveness, the fact that the fact that it's still around is a testament to the effectiveness, or it's providing something, or people would stop teaching it. So.
Well, yes and no. I see where you're coming from, but I think some of the effectiveness has been lost, because for something to be effective, it depends how you train, and the tools that you could potentially get need to be trained in the right way, because they need to be put into practice. Even if you do like a 2-person form set or kata or whatever you call it, you need to have that sparring element of actually, what can you do when something does actually come in? Are you able to actually put that technique into practice? And I think there are movements within sets that you also see taught in things like MMA and boxing. They just don't get given the name. The Hard to Hurt YouTube channels with Icy Mike, I know he's done a couple, maybe more. I haven't had time to watch that channel lately, but was it Bong Sao? There was certainly a Wing Chun technique that he was just showing is in boxing, and you wouldn't necessarily know that it's there. It's just something that people do, and they just think, oh, they're just moving their arms a block or whatever. So I think the effectiveness or not of a martial art, to me, I don't think is inherent in the martial art itself. I think it's inherent in the way that you train that martial art. And that's really, will something work or not? And even if something would it work in the street or not? Well, even if it would work in the street, whatever that means, if you've only ever trained it in, say, an octagon or a boxing ring, are you going to have that flexibility to be out of context and to use that technique as well? Which is why it is worth thinking about if self-defense and working in a combat situation outside of the consensual violence of a boxing ring or whatever is your goal. You need to consider those sort of scenarios and put those into a meaningful practice, because obviously, if something kicks off in a restaurant or whatever, you aren't used to training with tables and chairs being around, and that could throw you in a way that it wouldn't, you may have a great number of techniques, but they may not come to mind if you're then suddenly having to deal with a crowd and chairs and whatever else the situation is in. So, what's something effective for? I think it comes back to your goals. And I think you'd be hard pressed, particularly in the UK, to find a Tai Chi school that's going to make you an effective fighter. But that doesn't mean it's not effective, because there's a whole host of benefits from the training. And I think even if you don't want to practice it as a martial art, and if violence isn't your thing, you'd rather remove yourself from that side, I think you still need to acknowledge the history from where it came from. And those moves will have been put into the forms and the katas and the sets and whatnot, because they were practicing those sort of fighting techniques. But, back in the day, you'd have kung fu instructors who would potentially beat their students to death. You don't get that kind of training anymore, and I think that's good.
Yeah, I agree.
If you are potentially going to actually face real harm in your training school, I mean, obviously we all do. There's risks. That's why you sign waivers and get insurance and all the rest of it. But before those kind of ideas, it's probably not that long ago when you had those kind of harder, tougher schools. Your traditional techniques are probably going to be a bit better, because there is that very real violence inherent in the lesson itself, in that training that you're doing. You're not just, there aren't necessarily the same sort of sets of health and safety guidelines and rules that we have these days. And people are welcome to disagree with me. I think that's an improvement. I'm glad that we've got consideration for the welfare of our students when we teach.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, obviously there's numerous cases of bullies abusing their power, but that's a separate side of things. And, in an ideal world, you have instructors that aren't out to hurt you.
Exactly. Yeah. You got to take care of your training partners. And, although, as martial artists, I think some of us like a little bit of abuse, in the overall, you got to take care of each other.
Harm would have been a better word than hurt. I mean, it's, some things are going to hurt, and that's actually part of it. And like the full contact kung fu, we had this conditioning set where we'd, bash different parts of ourselves together repeatedly to toughen ourselves up. Which again, I don't actually think is something that people have always done, but isn't the best way if you want to strengthen your bones. Actually, it's not the repeated knocking and healing of those. It's putting the stress on from doing things like weight training and resistance training. But again, it's on the face of it seems to make sense. If you knock your arms together and those sides of things, it feels like it toughens them up. You do get used to the impact, but actually having lots of those little cracks, the micro cracks and stuff you get from those sites of impacts isn't the best way to strengthen bones. It's one of those things that's got a lot of tradition behind it, but isn't actually backed up by the research.
Yeah, I think there needs to be a little bit more of the science melded in with the, I don't know, ritual or tradition, or things change, and we learn more about the body and what it's capable of, and as great as kind of the mentality of iron sharpens iron and that sort of thing. Just kind of pounding each other doesn't always help, or is as helpful as we think. We need to learn a little bit more about the science and the anatomy and all those things. A little bit more of that needs to be integrated into the training. So
I remember that stuff did hurt, but hopefully it didn't harm. But harming wasn't the intent there. The intent was to sort of get tougher and stronger and be able to sort of withstand those blows. When it came to fighting, so yeah.
Nice, very nice. Okay, so let's move to your capoeira journey. With the capoeira, so for the followers that are not as familiar with capoeira, kind of the Cliff Notes version, there are kind of two main kind of versions of capoeira. There's what they call a capoeira regional and capoeira Angola. I would say if you're kind of used to watching things in the media, probably Capoeira Regional is kind of more shown, and that's where a lot of times you'll see a lot of the flips and that sort of things. And Capoeira Angola is a little typically a slower kind of pace, usually a little less of the kind of big flips and that sort of thing. But so just curious, so which form of capoeira do you train in, or have you changed over the years?
So my training principally has been with Oficina de Capoeira, which is a capoeira school from Belo Horizonte in Brazil. And in fact, this month they'll be celebrating 30 years of the school. But I can't be in Brazil for the festival to celebrate that. And the school is more regional than Angola. So whilst Angola and regional are the two main styles, you also get sort of contemporary schools that do both. And so the capoeira I've done has been mostly regional, but has been Angola and Angola influences as well. And that's both within Oficina, but also me personally. I've been to other capoeira schools and their events. And in fact, I've put on events myself to get guest instructors in, and sometimes have purposefully gone for Angola instructors to sort of explore that element and that side of capoeira. So yeah, it's regional primarily, though, I'd say is my main focus and background, but a lot of respect for Angola too. And for those who don't know the difference between either of those, if you're not sure about capoeira is an Afro-Brazilian martial art that's performed as a dance, and one of the things that grabbed me about it was, as well as the rich history and traditions and those sides of things which you get in the sort of Chinese martial arts I was used to, but there's the musical element as well. So when you perform this dance, you've got a circle of people called a roda, and the music that's being played there kind of dictates the game that's in the middle. So the music for the Angola rhythm is a bit slower than the rhythms you'd get in regional, but whether you're seeing regional or Angola, you still be able to recognize both of those as being capoeira.
Very nice, very nice. Yeah. Yeah, even though capoeira is gaining more popularity in the world, it's still pretty pretty niche. Not still a lot of people. I mean, especially if you compare it to like a taekwondo or Brazilian jiu-jitsu these days, a little harder to find capoeira schools. But I mean, they're all over, and I know at pretty much every place that I've traveled to, there's usually somebody teaching capoeira, kind of hiding out somewhere. So it's growing, and I love to see that growth, and hopefully we can get more people on board as different things are coming out, more videos and movies and things like that. Of course, we have the movie Only the Strong, and that's kind of the capoeira movie, and getting a lot more attention. So I think we need another movie like that, or a sequel or something to kind of get people's eyes on capoeira again. But there are definitely some people that are making that happen, and we're going to get a little bit more into that here in a little bit. But so I wanted to ask about your apelido, your capoeira nickname. In capoeira, many times we get kind of nicknames, and they can be based on all kinds of different criteria. So I'm assuming that because of your kung fu and tai chi experience, that's probably how your name came to be. But yeah, let's get the story of how you got your apelido.
Yeah, so the Apellidos are the story goes that the nicknames were given because it made it harder for informants. Capoeira used to be illegal in Brazil. It was only legalized in the mid 1930s. I want to say 1934, but around that time, I might have got that year wrong, but I think it was that sort of region. And that was the work of Mestre Bimba in Hearts, who was a very famous now Mestre, and others like Mestre Pachadino, who was an Angola Mestre. And so the Apellidos, they're not universal. Not everyone gets them, but they are extremely common. But it's probably more than actually the just nickname culture is also just a part of Brazilian culture. For example, Pelé, the famous Brazilian footballer, that's not actually his name. I've forgotten what his real name is. And so my Apellido, I actually got in the first lesson. Some people wait weeks, some months to get theirs. And mine came just in that first lesson before I even knew that Apellidos were a thing. This is my first capoeira lesson. And my instructor, Mestre Primo, he just said, I know what I'm going to call you. I'm going to call you Kung Fu. And I was like, okay, that sounds cool. It's strange, but sure, go for it. And it was because of how I was moving. It was very obvious that my background had come from the sort of kung fu side of martial arts, just in how I was moving my body and approaching, as the moves got sort of broken down to be taught to me, the sort of the way that I was sort of flowing them together looked a little bit more like I was doing kung fu than I was doing capoeira at that point in time. So that's where the nickname came from. And yeah, I like it. I know not everybody gets happy with the nicknames they've got. So sometimes they can be a bit sort of tongue in cheek and ideally be a bit more playfully ribbing somebody. But I always tried with my students as well when it came to Apellidos to hopefully give them one that they would like. And the other thing I'd always do is run it by my instructor. I'm not Brazilian, and it's the you don't want to give somebody a nickname that actually culturally it sounds like a fine word, but it's just used as an insult, and you just have got no idea why, because that's just one of those things that happens in languages. So yeah, that's Kung Fu is the nickname that I got my very first lesson, and in fact, that's how I know when the first lesson was, because I went onto Facebook, I think, having come back from that lesson. And back in the old days, I think with Facebook, it would say something like your name is, and then you put your status in there or something like that. So it just came off as like David Wood is Kung Fu, and that's the status. And yeah, that was July 2008. I forget the exact date, but I'll always get back and look.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah, I think I think you're probably the first person I've ever talked to that got their Apellido on the first day. With me, I didn't get any. I didn't get one until I think I was about 4 years in, and then I think I got like 5 of them in like the span of about a month or two. Fortunately, only one stuck, and the one that stuck, I like it. Well, I always say that kind of the batch of names that I got, a lot of them, most of them were pretty. I don't know, in my opinion, very kind of generic. In the capoeira world and a lot of capoeira schools and stuff, there are a lot of people that kind of get, I don't know, kind of get the same kind of nickname. There's some that just, I don't know, seem to gravitate towards a lot of people. But so I had a few generic ones, and then the one that stuck is Negao, and that's my Apellido, and I dig it, and it's fun. I have not. I think I've only run into 2 other people that had the same name, so I can enjoy that and feel like it's it's mine, and I don't really have to share it with others. So I like
Have
it.
you
I
ever
like it.
met one other kung fu on my travels. Shout out to kung fu from, I think it's in Wandsworth now. I think it's with Capoeira Flow. Um,
Mhm.
so yeah, it's nice to have a name that you don't get, and that's another thing to think about when naming my students. I've always sort of put a bit more thought into it. So um, I had like a student, she was very good at picking up sequences, just really quick. So I just called her sort of sequencia because I'd just show her a set of moves and she would sort of get that. Um, what else I had? There was another student who this was at a school, a club that I was doing, so it wasn't for the public. It was just for the students. I'm a science teacher by day, so I'm doing a school club there. And he left one term to go to the ukulele orchestra, and then he came back, I think, the next term. So I nicknamed him Ukulele. But that's harder to pronounce when um, your main language is Brazilian Portuguese. And so that got changed to cavaquinho, which is a similar instrument and also nicer. So I haven't ever met any other cavaquinhos. And it's, it just, you sort of pick something for a name and where they sort of come from. It can, be features of how somebody looks or what they do or what they've done or a particular incident, be that good or bad. And yeah, it's feels like a sort of big bit of responsibility. So my daughters who do capoeira as well, when it came to getting nicknames for them, I was thinking on that, and it's a little bit sad, but my mother-in-law had nicknames for them, which were sort of Sunshine and Treasure, and sadly she died. And so actually it was like, oh, those would make good nicknames. So Chizuru for Treasure and Luz de Sol for Sunshine. And those were quite nice. And I did run those by, and thankfully both of those have got no other negative
Yeah,
connotations.
I don't think I've heard those before.
No,
So
and again, I don't think I've ever met either of those. You might have Chizuru is treasure, Chisora is scissors. So if somebody's particularly adept to capoeira move, for example, that can get them that nickname. Or one of my students, again back from the school club, she awus are the names for a cartwheel in capoeira, and I think she's always good at doing it on one side but not the other. And she was always asking me questions about awus, and so it's just like got a nickname there, awu. Obviously, the pressure then though is if your nickname is a particular move, then you need to get quite good at that move. No pressure.
yeah, you mentioned the doing one side, and it just brought back a lot of memories, and actually even probably now, but still when my gosh, probably my first, at least probably first couple of years, that was always my issue is doing owls on one side, no problem, and then I just like couldn't do them on my other side, and everybody has a strong side and a weak side, but just if I was trying to go to my left, I could not. I think of makes me think of the movie Zoolander. It's like you can't turn left. I could never left, and so now I just use the excuse that I have a little bit of issue with my elbow, so it makes it difficult to do awus on that side now. So I kind of have a limited number of ones that I can do in any given day. So if I'm at a class or seminar or something, it's like, okay, I've got about 5 awus in me, so I got to make sure I spread them out accordingly so I don't hurt myself.
That's one of the things I liked about the capoeira training as well, is that their Semestre Bimba had some sequences that were trained, but again, they are always done on both sides. I know, like from Tai Chi and from Kung Fu, you do a form, but it wouldn't always have both sides. You do a move to sort of one side, and that's the only side that it would be on. And so I found the capoeira training was a little bit more balanced in terms of everything always gets done, at least in training, it's kind of pretty equal to both sides. I don't know if that's not entirely true. There are some sets that now are coming to mind where you did one set of things to the left hand side, you do the other set to the right hand side. But certainly there were a lot of sets that I did and learned that you would only do it on sort of one side. And I know like the Tai Chi short form, for example, once we learnt it to the right hand side, but starting with our arms going to the right and so on, we then practiced it going to the left, and that was more challenging. It was good to get that, but that was the only one of the Tai Chi forms that we learned where we did like the left and right hand side. Was with capoeira, it's just like, right, you're doing always up and down the hall, so you have to go and do it on your left, and you have to go and do it on your right. And even if you don't look so grand doing it on one side than the other, you'd still get that practice in, or fall on the floor trying.
Yeah, you gotta get both sides. So that is something that is very hotly debated in the Kempo world, in that we have self-defense techniques and various things that we do, and there's a camp of folks that's like, oh well, you only do it on the right side. We don't need to practice both sides. And then there's another camp that's yeah, you gotta do both sides. And I know in my experience, a lot of people don't like to do the left side because that's majority of people are right-handed, and so doing things on their left side adds a level of difficulty that I think most people are not interested in being a part of. But for me, I think it's important to do both sides. You got to work both sides of the brain and that sort of thing, and develop those muscle skills on all of your body, because you never know what you're going to be faced with in a self-defense situation or something, and you have to apply your knowledge, and you can't tell the bad guy, hey, wait, I only practice this on the right side, so you got to attack me this way. So that's my thing, and that's that. Everybody has their own idea of how it should be, but that's the way I see it. So very nice. So the teaching side. So you say in your profession you're a teacher, but with the capoeira side of teaching, was that something that you were always interested in being a part of, or like many of my guests, was it a thrust upon you and you had to answer the call?
No, I think teaching was certainly something that long term I've looked to sort of do. I know as sort of time went on, teaching does get thrust upon you within the lessons, because as a more senior student, when new students come in, the senior students can then come and help, because if you've got a class that says full ranges of ability, then when you've got the senior students, they can come and help guide the newer students when the instructor sort of is maybe busy elsewhere and has to kind of spread their time across everyone. And they may be able to give a bit more time to the beginners in the lessons, but they can't be there sort of for the whole session. So there'll be elements of those. And when I came to leave the charity sector and become a science teacher, I then met my now wife, and so also had to leave my capoeira school behind because it's sort of moving across the country. So it's a 2.5-3 hour drive away. And so sort of teaching was something I certainly had in mind with that. And my first year as a teacher, I didn't set up a capoeira club or anything. I just wanted to get settled into the new job, living in a new place. But the second year at my school, I then set up a capoeira club just for as an extracurricular activity after school, which was good. And then with that running well, I think it was then the year after that I then looked to set up a capoeira group for the local community, for the public. And I ran that for 4 years, I think it was. I put it on hiatus when my youngest daughter was born, because my eldest was 2.5, and having a newborn and a 2.5-year-old, it would have been hard to have managed the group. So the goal was to always come back. But it was 2019 that I put the group on hiatus, and obviously the pandemic happened and there were all the lockdowns and things, and so the group never came back. It was in that first lockdown that I got pain in my right hip, and initially it was diagnosed as being a soft tissue issue because I'd looked after my joints, and I've done obviously all the martial arts training. I've run marathons and things as well, but I've always looked after myself. If there were ever any niggles or minor tweaks or things, I wouldn't train on those. I would take time to rest and recover. And so it turns out that actually the martial arts and stretching after running and yoga and things have actually not been so good for my hips, because when I get to the end of a range of motion, because my sockets are smaller than they should be, the ball of my ball and socket joint rubs against the cartilage more than the cartilage can keep up with maintaining itself. So the diagnosis took 3-4 years to come through. Yeah, 4 years. And because of that, it sort of limited the training I can do. So capoeira teaching isn't something I'm going to be able to get back into, but which is a shame. I still like to go to and run capoeira events, and so teaching hasn't completely gone. I can always sort of coach and guide people, and there's always the musical side of things as well. But yeah, teaching was very much something that I wanted to do, and I think part of that was back to my Tai Chi time as well. I've been doing the Tai Chi for 3 years with Wutan before I went to university, and I can remember the head of the school saying, "Oh, when you go to university, would you like to teach Tai Chi up there?" And that was more a surprise. I wasn't anticipating that, and I was just like, "Oh, I hadn't considered that." And I said, "Do you think I'm up to it?" And he said, "Show me the forms and various bits and bobs." He said, "No, you should be able to do that." So I set up a Tai Chi club at university, which was good, and that was my first sort of teaching of martial arts, and I enjoyed that. And I think that certainly laid the foundations, possibly for both teaching capoeira, but also my professional job as a science teacher.
Very nice. Very nice. You think, has there been, I guess, what would you say maybe has helped in the kind of cross from your professional teaching and the capoeira teaching? Has there been any kind of cross lessons or things that you've been able to apply from one to the other?
I think there's been lots of things that will have helped. So things like structuring a lesson. I mean, you get your capoeira lessons anyway. You've got all that experience of having been taught. But in terms of thinking about actually then delivering a lesson, you used to do the warm-ups and do things like that and how to structure it. I think that's the side of things that's come in. And I think also it's just being used to having to explain things sometimes in a number of different ways and breaking things down, and that appreciation that everyone's different and can pick up things at different speeds and in different ways, and how you explain it or break it down, and just sort of tailoring that to the needs of the individual has certainly been helpful. And I think it just sort of it feeds into each other. And I think also the other thing that teaching does, I think, is it improves your techniques as well, and your own knowledge and thinking about things. And in the case of sort of capoeira, for example, sometimes you'll I can remember showing a kick called an armada. It's a spinning kick in capoeira. And this is the other thing for our listeners. In capoeira, you'll find, though, that sometimes different capoeira schools will give different names to the same move, or they'll give a name that one capoeira school gives to one move, and they'll call it, that name will go to a different move. That's just the way that capoeira is kind of organically grown. But anyhow, it was armada that I was teaching. I can remember someone was like, "What do you do with your foot?" And I was just like, "Actually, I don't know." I just do it. And I've learned it now. It's one of those things when you first start learning some of these moves, you think, okay, I need to put this foot here, and then these arms go here, and I need to twist that, and then I need to do this, and then eventually, obviously, it just becomes the movement, and then you just do the movement. And there are some of those little bits that you won't necessarily think about doing anymore. And so, when you get those questions, you're like, oh yeah, I don't know. Let's just do the movement and focus on what am I doing with my foot? Oh, I'm pivoting on the ball of my foot. That's what I'm doing there. Or you're like, oh, actually, no, I need to put my weight back and shift it like this. Do you see that movement? So just get one to look. And I think just thinking deeply about how you're moving sort of helps. And it's being prepared for those kind of questions, because also you'll get that in a science lesson. We can't know all of the science, otherwise it'd have stopped. And also it's not enough capacity in our little brains. But I love it when I get a question when I don't know the answer. And so sometimes I'll always tell a student, I'll say, actually, I don't know the answer, but my guess would be this. I'll try and find out. And other times it's like, I'm going to have to try and find out myself and do some research. And those are always good, because that helps sort of expand you as well. And I think that element of teaching isn't always present in teachers. I've certainly encountered some teachers who don't like to show that they don't know things and don't want to admit to that fallibility, both within the martial arts and also just professional teachers I've met. And I think that's an attitude that I would advise any instructors to shift, because none of us are perfect. We're aiming for that, but there's always things that can be improved upon. And having that humility and admitting mistakes is fine, because that's just part of life. And obviously try and make fewer mistakes, but they also offer an opportunity to learn as well. I know that when, like, if I'm doing a calculation on my visualizer in lesson, and then I make a mistake, I'll then actually be, oh yeah, look, this is what happened. I've done this, and I should have done that. It's a common thing, and it happens when I've not enough sleep for whatever reason, or things like that. But then you can explain to students, as like, actually, every time you do a calculation, as the answer that you've got, does it make sense? And if it doesn't, well then pause. Something's gone wrong somewhere. And you can then sort of show them those techniques, because they're going to make mistakes at some point, and if they can then spot and correct them. And it's the same when it comes to your techniques in the martial arts. What they're sort of meant to look like, but it's why it's good technique good practice, if you can, to have a mirror or to film yourself, so you can actually see what you're doing. Is your arm at the right angle? You may think it is, but you can actually, if you're seeing a mirror, or you can watch a video of yourself back, you can sort of improve that way. And that could also come from your students, because, if they say, I thought you said that your hand needs to be like this. And then you're like, I did, didn't I? I've obviously got a bit sloppy. So those are the kind of things to do, because you can learn by rote of what you should be saying, what you should be doing. Although that leads into the fact, if you look at sometimes some of these sort of pro fighters, you always talk, keep your guard up like that. But actually, if you look at a lot of people, their arms aren't up. They're sometimes just here. And I think with all of these sort of rules, you've got to learn them before you can sort of bend or break them. And if you're bending or breaking them, but you're not getting the results, it's probably best to go back to remembering what those rules were. And it's maybe not time to break them just yet.
Exactly. Yeah. That's what makes the difference between, I guess, a good teacher and a not so good teacher is, I guess any teacher can teach you the how, but a good teacher can teach you the why, and can teach you to be able to ask those questions, and to not be afraid to say, hey, I don't know, but you know what, I will find the answer, or I will be able to tell you how you can find the answer. And yeah, unfortunately there are a lot of teachers out there, and not just in capoeira, but in any martial art, who maybe aren't the greatest teachers. They may be great fighter, they may be a great they have the highest kicks or the fastest hands or whatever the case may be, but teaching is a skill that, just like with anything, it needs to be developed. And just because you're an advanced rank, a black belt, a mestre, a professor, whatever it is, doesn't necessarily mean that you are ready to teach. You have to learn how to do it. And it kind of surprises me that more people don't look into what professional teachers are doing. A lot of us kind of get in this mode that, oh well, once we get advanced, because we've done 1,000 kicks, we know how to teach it. But I think there should be a little bit more of a integration in, hey, what are professional teachers doing to teach their students, and I think a little bit more of that in the martial arts instructors should be there. So that's just my little rant, but that's how it goes. So,
Well, yeah, but it's also, it's the, you know, sometimes the best teachers aren't necessarily the best the thing themselves. Sometimes, especially in the UK, there's a focus on sort of just having, sort of just having like a first class degree, but actually it, you've got to have enough skills, obviously, within your subject. But the key thing to being a teacher is getting the best out of your pupils. And I think teaching, just as an example of this, I used to get really bad exam anxiety and underperformed in school tests and things. And this carried on into university. I remember I was helping one of my friends with her biochemistry revision, and she did a better result in the test than I did. And it's like, that's, and I'm not going to say that result was entirely down to me helping her with her revision. She also put in some hard work herself as well. But it's the, I want my students to be better than me. If my students end up excelling beyond me, that's great. That's sort of job well done. And that's what you're sort of hoping for when things happen.
Yeah, I've always been of the mind that if you're a teacher, if you don't want your students to be better than you, then you should not be teaching. That is as great as it is to be the best in the room or whatever. Your students should be excelling past you. But that's.
It comes down to motivations, really, doesn't it? I guess
yeah.
If you're attracted to having the power side of things, and this is why there have been abuses and of that power within the martial arts world, and obviously beyond as well. What's your goal as a teacher? Why are you there? Is it because it's been thrust upon you and you're doing it begrudgingly because you kind of have to, out of obligation? Are you doing it because you like to be in charge and it's me, I'm the big boss? Is it you're wanting to get the best out of others? Is it you want to get the best out of yourself? And I think, those are things you should possibly sort of contemplate when you're teaching. And what are your motivations? How does that affect how your teaching is going to be? And it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be a bad teacher if you want to be the best person in the room, but then you need to be mindful of what's that going to mean if some of your students do start doing some things better than you, for example, because you've taught them very well. Are you prepared to handle that? And if you can, because you can leave your ego at the door and just feel like, actually, yeah, I don't like that they're better than me now, but I just need to work harder, then that's a better attitude than, trying to remove that student, say, from the class by sort of bullying or whatever else, which sadly does happen.
Nice, very nice. Okay, so we're flying through time here. I want to make sure that we cover one more point before we head towards wrapping up here. So that is you, like me, have decided decided that you like pain, and you have your own podcast. So, what was the genesis of committing yourself to a life of suffering by doing all the things that are required to have a podcast? What drove you to start your own podcast?
So, unfortunately, my podcast is a lot less painful for me. So the podcast came about because I this was before the arthritis diagnosis, but the pain in the hips was limiting what I could do. Physically, the pandemic and so on had limited the travel to capoeira events, and I wouldn't change this for the world, but my daughter's on the scene as well also limited my travel to capoeira events. Totally worth it, but it meant that I was feeling disconnected from the capoeira community. And so with the rise of sort of podcasts and Zoom things over the lockdowns, I thought, well, I could have the capoeira community come to me and just have a video call and a chat about capoeira with capoeiristas of all levels. And I kind of sounded it out with a few friends. Do you think that sounds like a good idea? And they said yes. So I just went for it. I just looked into how to do it, and mine is very low pressure. I don't have any sort of sponsorships or things like that, so it's not like work. It's more play. I'm not obligated to it. I want to get episodes out, but for example, last year I only actually managed to release, I think it was 3 episodes, and then there was like an 8-month gap just because life was just too chaotic. So it was more about just kind of reconnecting with the capoeira community and feeling more connected. And so it's been a mix in terms of guests. Some of them are friends of mine that I sort of know, but others, initially I was just reaching out to capoeiristas I was aware of, some of which I hadn't met. And now it's grown enough that occasionally people get in touch with me, which is good, to sort of suggest guests or volunteer themselves. And yeah, it's just been nice. It's been good for mental health as well. So just sit down and chat about capoeira, which we love. And I've had some positive feedback as well, which is nice as well, because it's I want it to contribute something as well. And that's why I sort of get the range of guests, because I think there's value in listening to the experiences of complete beginners and their take on things, just as much as it is to hear the wise words of a Mestre who's 40 years into the game. And fortunately the audience seems to disagree. The full audience seems to agree with that, and it's been ticking along nicely. And it's nice to have there as a little sort of passion project, labour of love, just in the background that sort of ticks along. And I really enjoy it. So that's how it came about. And dear listener, if you'd like to check it out, it's The Life Capoeira. It's on all the usual podcast platforms.
Yeah, I will include links to that in the show notes. So, definitely check that out. I think I've mentioned this to you before, but I will say that I am extremely jealous. You got to interview one Lateef Crowder, who, for those that may not know, he's definitely the capoeira guy in many films these days, and probably his biggest credit, he is one of the stunt doubles for The Mandalorian. So he is I mean, he's all around pretty awesome. So, yeah, I saw that you had an episode with him, and I've been trying to get him on the show for a while. I'm still going to try. So, if you're out there, if you're out there listening, watching, I'm going to get you on one of these days. But
It was a really
um,
interesting chat, and I hope you do manage to connect
yeah, he
because
mentioned a lot of things that I had no idea about him. So yeah, definitely check that episode out. It's a great listen, and yeah, I'm just loving what you're doing with the show there. And I know from my perspective, it's I've had a lot harder time uh, getting capoeiristas on the show. I've had a few in the time that I've done, but I know quite a few, and just getting them getting them locked down is pretty tricky. So I sincerely thank you for taking the time to to be on, especially with the time difference. You're across the pond, as we like to say from me. So, but we've made it work, and that's good. So I thank you for that. So we're gonna go ahead and move into what I call our lightning round here. Got a few little questions for you as we head towards wrapping up. So the first question being, do you have a favorite technique?
from Capoeira, probably Jinga, which may sound basic, but it's the foundation of all the other moves. Just being put on the spot there, that's the first one that came to mind. So yeah, Jinga.
No, I like it. That's a great answer. I mean, you can't build a house without a foundation. So yeah, I love it. I love it. I love it. So since we'll kind of go back to the Tai Chi world, the next question is, do you have a favorite form?
Um, so the Chen Manqing short form, particularly that was the first one that I learned. Um, and now there's a second form. Well, it wasn't the second form I learned. I've forgotten its name, but it looked really cool. And it was, I've forgotten its name. It's been that long, but it was, in terms of the form, it was a bit closer to Kung Fu. It's a bit faster. Um, I felt it looked cooler. I was kicking myself that I can't remember the name. I've been put on the spot there, but
Well, no
yeah,
worries, no
cool.
worries. If you think of it later, you can send it to me, and I'll just try and find a way to put it in the notes, and maybe put some little graphic or something, text on the screen, and add that in there. So not a problem. All right. So we're gonna move to the next question. Do you have a favorite weapon?
I'm terrible with it. The three section staff, I think,
Oh,
is
very
is
nice.
just like when you see it in the movies being used well. I think whether it would work in real life as well as some other things out there, but I think just in terms of its flow and grace and things when it gets used, that's always pretty cool. And then um, probably followed closely by nunchucks, especially when wielded by Bruce Lee.
Exactly. Yeah, I would love to learn the three sectional staff one of these days, but I'm sure I would succeed in beating myself up with them more than anyone else. But
And
yeah,
like
I've always thought those were cool.
nunchucks are always foam, but because you're always going to hit yourself in the head when you're practicing. But I've only ever practiced with wooden three section staffs, and yeah, you do hit yourself. You don't mean to, but you do.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to avoid it. Very nice. All right. Next question. If there's anyone that you could train with, living or dead, fictional or non-fictional, who would that be?
I think it would have to be Mestre Bimba in his Head school when I wasn't aware my hips are going to become arthritic, like 20-year-old me, blissfully unaware of the issues to come. Um, yeah, I think being in his school would be where I'd like to be. I think Mestre Vimba, I mean, Mestre Pastina as well, and these two sort of legendary figures. But I think Vimba just has the edge, I think, from in terms of the training. But tough call, yeah.
All right. Very nice. Very nice. All right. The final question there, what is something that always motivates you to train and or something that you want to put out to motivate others to train? So I typically use the example of the movie Rocky IV. We had the training montage where he's running through the snow and lifting the rocks and all that good stuff. And anytime I see that, I'm excited to hit the mats and get to work. So what is something like that for you, or something that you want to share for others to motivate them?
I think I'm always quite goal orientated. I think it's about thinking about where are you wanting to go. So I think that's the thing, is it's sort of keep your eyes on the prize and be realistic with it. So if you're wanting to climb a mountain, metaphorical or real, I suppose, it's sometimes it's not necessarily the peak that you want to focus on first. It's what's a sensible sort of first bit to getting towards that. And I think that attitude has helped me in things like, say, marathons. When I've run those, it's sometimes you've got 26.2 miles, and sometimes it's not thinking about the 26. You're just thinking, I'm just going to get to the next mile marker, and you hit that, and then you think, right, just get the next one done. I think just, what is the next step that's going to help you get to where you want to go, and have both of those things in mind. What's the big overarching goal? What's the next step to sort of getting there?
I love that. I love that. It reminds me very much of something that the late great Chuck Norris said in an interview. He was being asked, how was your kind of game plan for becoming a world champion and all of these things, and he said that he never thought about it in, oh, well, I'm going to be a champion, I'm going to win this tournament or anything like that. He wouldn't even think of it as, I'm going to win this fight. He would just think of, okay, I'm going to get this punch in first. I'm going to get this kick in first. And then, okay, you get that. Okay, well, I'm going to get the next kick in first. And just thought of those very obtainable goals. And you just kind of stack those up. And then next thing you know, okay, well, you're a world champion, or you won the tournament, or whatever that thing is. So I like having those goals in more bite-size pieces, and then you build up to something bigger. So I like it. I like it. Yeah. All right. So we are at our very final piece of business for today, and that is the shameless self-promotion. So you can go ahead and plug anything that you want, or if there's anything that you haven't said that you wanted to make sure to cover, you now have the floor, and then we'll close out our time from there.
Well, I've already mentioned my podcast, The Life Capoeira, which is on all the usual sort of podcast platforms. I've got heavily underused social media. I haven't got the time to sort of do those, and but The Life Capoeira on Facebook and Instagram is there. And if this episode is going out in the next 7 days from recording, I'd like to just give a shameless plug to my friend Mestre Carlão. He has got a little crowdfunder on. He's doing a capoeira music album, very much with a sort of politics in mind, as a sort of a musical stand against the rise of the far right in Brazil. So I'll send the crowdfunder link to that. There's only 7 days left, but I'll give him a plug as well whilst I'm here.
All right. Very nice. Very nice. Yeah. Send me those links, and I'll make sure to get them in, and we can work on getting that put out so people can get involved in that. So yes, thank you so much. So We are done for our time today. As I say with pretty much all my guests, there's so many things that we could get into, but we don't have time to do a 25-hour show. So we will. You have an open invitation to be back on at any time, and we can get into more topics as we go along. So once again, a huge thank you, obrigado for taking the time to be on and sharing your story. And I'm sure the followers will enjoy this one, and definitely send them to check out your show and all the great guests that you've had, and we'll continue to watch what you're doing and cheer on your success. And yeah, once again, I just thank you so much for being on.
My pleasure, and thank you very much for your podcast and your work too. I've really enjoyed it, and until next time. Ciao.
Ciao.